Good evening. Don Palayo checking in. Today is Tuesday. What is the date? July 15th. Um, how's everybody feeling out there? Does anybody else feel like we're on the precipice of something big about to happen? Here lately it's been feeling more and more that way to me. The world is changing. And I feel like I hate to say this, but I feel like the US is kind of fading. Western civilization is kind of fading a little bit. Our light's at least a lot dimmer than it was 30 years ago. 1995, things were going great here. Of course, 95, this was the height of the tech boom. You had Microsoft Windows 95, and you had just all of that stuff. The internet was really getting going at that point. Just so many things were breaking at that point. And it was just such a huge revolutionary time in terms of technology, and our American economy just exploded as a result of it all. Now, Americans are tired. Americans are frustrated. There's a lot of tension. There's not a lot of happiness right now. Men and women already don't like each other. Men are tired of women. Women are tired of men. Birth rates are plummeting. Nobody's having kids anymore. Nobody can afford to have kids. It's like only the wealthiest people can afford to even have kids anymore. There are a lot of some significant problems right now in the West. The East has its problems too. I mean, you look at the Middle East. You've got that part of the world's always been a cluster. It's it's just they just can't stop fighting. It's just violence all the time. It's like you have a few bright spots over there in the Middle East with Qatar and United Arab Emirates, and it's like, but other than that, it's like, it's a shame, because they've had some great civilizations over there in the Middle East in the past. You had Egypt, and you had Persia, and you had some great civilizations rise up, and it's kind of a shame that it just feels like it's just all the violence that it's just constantly violent, and you just wish that they could get back to maybe some of those great civilizations that they used to have in the Middle East. Then in terms of Russia, you got Russia, which is this stupid war in Ukraine. It's like, I don't even really understand why Russia decided to go after Ukraine. It's kind, I mean, Russia doesn't need more territory. It does. Russia doesn't need more land. It's already got the biggest piece of land on Earth. They're the largest country on Earth. They don't need more land. They need development. Russia needs more development. And by launching a war like this on Ukraine, they're just chasing financing to help develop their country away. So to me, it was just kind of a dumb move on Putin's part. I know he kind of wanted to put more space, but NATO's not going to be invading Russia. NATO has no interest in invading Russia. So I think and I think Putin knows that, and I think it was just a pretext to attack Ukraine, and it just doesn't make any sense. So I just think that was a dumb plan. Really, Russia needs development more than it needed more land. They need to develop the territory that they already have. And then, China is just a mixed bag. They are the world's factory. China is pretty much you could consider it the world's factory these days. They have a lot of manufacturing. But on the other hand, I don't trust their government at all. I think they have a lot of ambitions for global power. So I have a hard time trusting their government. The average Chinese people are not really free. They're just basically, indentured servants there. They get paid very little for the work that they do. They're not free to. They don't have freedom of religion. They don't have freedom of speech. They don't have a lot of the freedoms that we have here in the West. China fears its own people, and so they hold a firm power, and they threaten them with violence if they step out of line. So, and then they're threatening their neighbors more and more. They're threatening Taiwan. They're threatening some of the other Asian countries in the area, Australia and Japan at times. It's like, I don't know. I think sooner or later it's gonna come to a head with China. And personally, China's building up their navy. They're building up all of their military as quickly as they can. I think the earlier we have that confrontation, the better off it is. I hate saying that just because they are growing at such a fast pace. Problem is America's weak right now, and we keep sending all of our weapons. We're building weapons, but we're sending them to Ukraine. And it's like that's not helping us. It's like we need to rebuild our military and make sure that we're prepared for any kind of confrontation that we might have to face with China. But I don't know. I just feel like all of this is going in a bad direction right now. I don't see a whole lot of bright spots in the world right now. Europe is being overrun by immigrants with very different values, very different cultures, and they're not coming to Europe to become part of the fabric of Europe. They're coming to Europe to take over. That's what they're coming to Europe for. These Islamists, the Muslims, they're not coming to Europe to become part of the European culture. That's not why they're there. They are there to turn Europe into an Islamic area. Europe better wake up, and Europe better wake up in a hurry, because that's happening faster and faster. There's been some news stories out in Spain. They've been having some of these migrants, migrant gangs going after the local population. It's like these European governments have got to get this liberal crap out of their heads, wake the hell up, and start booting these people out. I mean, I'm sorry, but they're putting their own citizens in danger by doing these stupid ideas. Anyway. It's frustrating. It's frustrating that that the people in the West, it's really hard to count on our governments right now. We elect these people who then just turn around and use their positions to do everything but serve their people. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. They're serving business interests. They want the cheap labor for their business, for their economic sector, but it's not helping their citizens. They're not helping their own people. That's got to change. Government, politicians, you've got to start looking out for the best interest of your citizens. And this isn't it. This is not it. You're hurting your own societies. You're damaging your cultures. You're tearing down, the fabric of your societies by doing this. So it's got to change. It's got to change. Trump is trying to change it here in the United States. He's doing a pretty good job in terms of the immigration problem that we have. I don't have a problem with immigrants per se. It's like as long as they're here legally, and we know that we have, we have all the their documented history, and that we're not bringing in violent gang members into our country. That's one thing, and these people are helping and are productive here in our society. I don't have a problem with that. But all of these Western countries are going to have to be very cautious about who they're bringing in, know everything they need to know about the people they're bringing in, and keep the numbers down. It's like we just can't take millions at a time the way they're coming in. And the same thing with England. England can't be taking these tens of thousands that keep showing up in England. You know, Europe's got to wake up. They got to wake up. So anyway, there's a lot of frustration, a lot of concern for the future. And it just feels like things are starting to really be, something's coming down the pipe, and it's like, I don't think it's going to be pretty, unfortunately. The main question I have is, how bad is it going to be? I think our populations can handle, a mild situation. We can handle, but if we get into like a major global conflict or some sort of, like a world war or a civil wars or anything like that in the near future, that's going to be disastrous. So we're not ready for it. The citizens are not prepared for something like that. People here in the United States, for the most part, are pretty soft these days. We're not. We've been pretty comfortable for a while. We haven't grown up in an era where we've really had to worry too much about a major war. We've had small skirmishes here. We haven't really had a major war since Vietnam, really, where we saw a lot of our troops die and things. We've pretty much been able to handle things with air power and some minor ground troops. It's like in terms of Iraq and Afghanistan and all of that. So I kind of worry about this, because I don't feel like the West is really, we're pretty weak. We're pretty weak right now. And some of these other areas of the world, they've been going through their hard period, and they have no qualms about fighting, and they're a lot more, comfortable with that environment. So I think we've got some problems. We're going to have some issues, but it's a good idea to be prepared, have some basic supplies on hand at home. I'm really thinking about putting together like a bug out bag. Bug out bag is probably enough. I think I want to make mine to have enough for about a week, where I could leave my home for a week if needed and be okay. I think I'm going to also have some supplies in my car, some things that won't be, can't keep food in the car, things like that. But I want to get a larger tent, like a, I have a small tent that's big enough for me, but I'd like to get a bigger tent in case I need to, get some family members and get out of here, get out of the area. And, I would probably, I live in central North Carolina. If something bad were to really go down here, I would be trying to get my family members out and head for the mountains. We're not far from the Blue Ridge Mountains, from the Appalachian Mountains. That would be pretty much where I would be headed for. I have family up in the near the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I could get up into the mountains pretty easy, and with my family, and we could shelter up there for weeks if we needed to. So I want to have some supplies like ready to go, where if we really needed to get away and have enough emergency meals that I could just throw into my car and then just get out, we could. I feel like it could come down to that and I don't think it's nearly necessarily that far down the road. Um, one worry that I have is that I kind of live on the western side of my city. My parents live kind of in the northeast part of our county. And I'm just trying to think what would be the easiest way for me to get from my house to my parents without having to get on the interstate. Because usually I get on the highway to get over to my parents' house. There are some back roads I could take, and I need to map that out and just come up with a good escape plan. My oldest daughter lives nearby. She lives less than 10 minutes away from where I live, so I could easily get to her if I needed to. Um, but it's just something I'm really starting to think along these lines. I really have been thinking a lot about my house. I bought this house 4 years ago, and it's a great house. I like the house. I live kind of in a cluster home community. It doesn't have any shared walls with anybody else, but there's several small homes in this neighborhood, same style and everything, kind of cluster homes. And I like it because if you look at the crime map for my county, nothing happens in this neighborhood. And I think a big part of that is the fact that all these homes, all the neighbors are close together, and that does create a little bit of safety. But it's also, I'm right in the middle of everything. I'm a half mile from our mall. One of the local hospitals is right here down the street. Um, just It's a good thing about having the hospital right there, but at the same time, if the cities become violent, I don't know if this is where I want to be, you know? So I've thought a lot about selling this house and buying something more rural. But right now with the interest rates the way they are, that's probably not something that's going to happen for a while. If I do get an opportunity, if interest rates do come down a couple of points, it might be something I'll be considering later on. But we're just going to have to see how the market plays out with housing. So anyway, I would be for all of those watching. You need to have a backup, have a plan, have an emergency plan. You need to be thinking about where would you go if you needed to leave your home. I think it's best if you can stay in your home and ride things out from home. Um, but there may be times where you'll have to leave, and you need to have a plan where you would go, how you would get your family if you have other family with homes in the area. How would you get to them? Some place where you could all hunker down. There's safety in numbers. I intend to take the firearms that I have with me, with several boxes of ammo. Um, I think I could have enough at least for a few weeks, you know, in terms of defense or hunting if we needed to, or whatever we needed to do. Um, but it is kind of a concern. All of this is becoming more concerning, I think, and I don't mean to sound, some people think this might think this sounds a little bit, you know, paranoid, but I I just think it's a good idea to be prepared. I'm planning to stay here at my house for the time being. I do keep my pulse, keep a pulse on what's going on, just to see how things are going in the country and in my local area. My local area hasn't gotten too bad yet. There've been some shootings, but in the typical areas in my city that you would kind of expect that stuff to happen. But I don't know. I just have a bad feeling like things are going to get a little worse before they get better, and it's just a question of how bad it gets. So Anyway, I'd be thinking about stuff like that. I'd be thinking about your emergency plan. You might want to think about creating a pack that you could take with you in an emergency that you could just easily grab it and go if you needed to. I need to get mine built out. So that's something I'm gonna start working on. Um, anyway, something to think about. You guys have a great evening. I know that wasn't my cheeriest conversation, but I think it is important for all of us to be thinking about how we're going to handle any kind of emergency that we have in terms of potential violence that could be happening near our homes, and as people get more tense and things become more stressful financially for people, we could really see some potential problems. So anyway, this is Don Palayo checking out. You guys have a great evening.